There's something so fundamental about fear in human life, and it's no coincidence that the first emotion that's mentioned in the Bible is fear. When Adam discovers that he is naked, fear comes first, and then shame later. And fear clearly has an evolutionary function. It emerged as a phenomenon because creatures who had the capacity for fear had greater likelihood of survival than creatures who did not have that capacity. So fear can be highly functional. However, fear can also become highly dysfunctional, and it becomes so when it loses proportion, when it becomes too strong, when we fear the wrong things, and when we fear things too much, and so on. And it's quite a common feature in different surveys these days. When people are asked to estimate the risk they're subject to, they tend to believe that their lives have become more dangerous, that there are more risks than there used to be, and that these risks are higher than they used to be. Whereas a more modest risk analysis would suggest that no, in fact it's the opposite. Our lives have never been safer. And one could perhaps even say that precisely because our lives are so safe these days, we have a surplus of consciousness that can be directed towards all sorts of potential fears that will probably never be realized in our lives. And in what is often referred to as risk society, people are not more subject to risk than they used to be, but they have a heightened consciousness of risk. They are more concerned with risk, and they have a lower tolerance for risk. And these perceptions of risk are very rarely based on their own experiences or on the experiences of people they know. They're imaginary, one could say. They are based on the thoughts of everything that could happen. We're talking about potential risks. But most potential risks never become actual risks. The problem with such a perception of risk is that it leads to a politics of prevention in which we ask for more and more and more safety measures. And there's no limit to the amount of precaution one can take. And what we too rarely think about is the cost of these precautions. Not only in terms of money, of course they cost money, but also in terms of a restriction on our freedom. We cannot move about in the cities as freely as we would like to because there are various safety measures. And when you go to an airport, you have to go to the security control and so on. But on an even more fundamental level, this sort of prevalent fear undermines the basic ontological security we need in our lives. I mean, a fundamental part of living a life of freedom is to be able to go about your daily doings without having to think too much about what you're doing. So go about in an obvious way, not having to think about how dangerous this or that is. So it undermines our freedom. It also undermines our trust in each other. And trust is a very basic human phenomenon that we need in order to function properly. In such a society of risk, other people become threats. They are risks. They might be dangerous. And it can lead to social disintegration. It's been shown in many studies that people who have a high level of generalized trust, people who think that other people for the most part are to be trusted, generally have a low level of loneliness. On the other hand, people who have a low level of generalized trust tend to have high levels of loneliness. So it isolates us from each other. When you do not have that fundamental trust in others, it's hard to form proper connection to them. And we should resist such a climate of fear. And we should also ask ourselves, whenever we're told that something is particularly dangerous, why am I being told this now? From whom does this information stem? What could be the purpose of this information? Because our political and social fears, they're also shaped by various political and economical interests. And whoever can direct fear in a society will also have very great power in that society. So we should try to resist it. And the main reason why we should is simply that living a life of fear is incompatible with living a life of happiness. It's really as simple as that.